What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a great one. As always, today we're doing something a little unusual. As you can see, I have already cracked into this beauty here, but we are going to be talking about Facepool's Mariya Oktyabrskaya, one of my favorite people from history, as we take a quick glance at this here box. Now, if you aren't familiar with her, I will give you a very fast history lesson because she is super cool. I love the font that they did on this, just as a random side note. But essentially, she is a World War II hero from Soviet Russia. At one point, her husband ended up dying in combat fighting the Nazis, so she decided to sell everything that she had, took all of that money, wrote a letter with a check to Stalin, and basically said, "Hey Joe, my husband died. I want to buy a tank. I want you to teach me to drive it, and I want to go out and get some revenge by killing Nazi scum." And Stalin was just like, okay. So he did that. She ended up buying a tank, got trained to drive it, named it the Fighting Girlfriend, which is just awesome, and then she went around adding K's to every Nazi that she saw. So she is super cool in my book. She did end up serving through, I think, about 12 or 13 missions, if I'm not mistaken. She did take injuries in her last one, which she eventually died from, and then I believe after her death she got awarded like Russia's highest battle medal of honor type thing. Sadly, I'm not too familiar with Russia's war awards, but I know they hooked her up pretty well. So all of that to say, she is a darn cool person. If you don't know anything about her, definitely check her out. Really just a fascinating story. And I think if she were American, we would have had a whole bunch of movies about her already, because she is super duper cool. Now, I did, as you can see, unbox this lady already, as well as the deluxe base that you see here. Now, the reason that I did not stay with that video is kind of two parts. So first off, putting this jacket on took me a very, very long time. Just getting it to fit right where it didn't hinder her movement was very, very difficult. Also, getting everything out of the box kind of took longer than I wanted, and it just sort of made it a little bit longer than need be. So we're just going to kind of take a look at everything. I'll glance over the pros and the cons. There are some issues that I have with it, but they're all relatively minor in the grand scheme of it all. Now, first off, once she has this jacket on, it does fit very, very nicely. It does not hinder her movement too much. I have the sleeve bunched up a little bit in there still, so I need to work that out. That's why that arm's not moving too well. But typically, you'll be able to get a pretty good range of motion even with this leather coat on. It is genuine leather. Facepool did a very good job with that, so it should hold up pretty well over time as long as you're not too rough with it. Now, one of the first issues that I had with the actual jacket, you get a ton of shoulder boards and metals and all of that other stuff with her, which is awesome. And most of them attach by magnet, which is a cool concept, but very, very difficult to do. So these guys here are kind of a pain. They come off real easy. Now, they do have double-sided tape on the back end of them, so you can peel that off and tape them down, which I'm more than likely eventually going to do, but it is a bit difficult just to kind of get these in place to where they're not horribly hideous. They do stick pretty well, but they still kind of stand up a bit. They don't line up just right, so it is something that you're going to have to play around with a little bit. Other problem that I ran into is getting this belt attached. This little strap here, according to the instructions, the belt is supposed to fit through this little leather loop, but the glue is definitely too tight. There's not big enough of an opening to actually do it. So I just kind of ended up tucking it in there, which is pretty much how it's going to stay. Now, you don't really need to use this little harness thing. This was actually something, to the best of my knowledge, it's supposed to be one of the harnesses that she used for repairs. Not only did she drive tanks, but she also fixed them. And one of the coolest things about this lady, she would climb out on her tank during combat harness onto the side of it and repair things while they were fighting stuff. So, like, I get scared going outside in bad storms. This lady was leaving her tank while Nazis were shooting at her, fixing it up, and then coming back in. So it's not too hard to tell why people ended up really respecting and loving her in the grand scheme of things. One thing I'm not going to do, but I thought was a nice touch, you can actually take the cap of that canteen off. So if for some reason you wanted to, you can twist and pop that canteen off, which was pretty cool. And then she does have a holster here, which was kind of a pain to deal with, so I'm not actually going to use it at all. I'm just going to kind of leave it there. I'll leave the gun out of it. Now, as for her legs, double jointed in the knees, you get plenty of movement there. Her under outfit, the little green fabric one, there's no restriction on it at all. So if you wanted to put her in any crazy poses, you're going to be in pretty good shape there, especially if you take the jacket off and just have her in that kind of standard Russian war uniform. The only issue I had beside that is these boots are very, very, I'll just say cheap. I don't think they're going to hold up over time. I think they're going to flake and kind of peel, but they are just genuinely fake. Kind of a funny way of putting it. They're fake leather and very, very basic. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you could easily replace these guys if you needed to with just kind of a standard black combat boot. Not going to be too big of a deal at all. Now, the head sculpt, they did do rooted hair, which I was kind of upset about, but it's a Facepool head sculpt. And if you haven't gotten anything from Facepool, they are incredible. I was just absolutely blown away by this. Just kind of the life that they add to the faces, the expressions that they do. Really, really fantastic job. So I was super happy to have one. You may want to check them out if you do any kit bashing, because you can just buy the head sculpts individually. And that might be worth doing. I don't think you can get one of hers, but they definitely have some cool ones. And as you can see, I just knocked off one of the shoulder boards, but I'll play with that a little bit later. Now, she does come with a decent amount of accessories. There is a deluxe and a regular one, which I will show you the difference of in just a moment, if I can get her to stand up. Good enough. So she does have a little tool bag, but none of her actual accessories really fit in there. But you can just sling that over her shoulder for some little extra flavor there. It is a decent design. I wish it kind of had some stuff to load up into it. I think that would make a little bit of a nicer touch to it. But for the most part, kind of a nice job. You get a giant wrench for working on tanks, which is awesome. I may end up using this as a weapon for a different figure at some point, just because it's massive and looks cool. And I think like a giant dude swinging this around would be kind of neat. So I might go that route, but definitely cool. It is plastic. It does have a really good paint, though. They did a great job applying all of the paint to it to where it's weathered, and just really does have a nice metallic look there. So kudos to them in that regard. They definitely did a good job. Now you also get an accordion. Not only was this lady awesome at killing Russians, or killing Nazis, but she was a musician, so she could kind of write her own drill music as she's driving around wreaking havoc, cheering up the civilians and soldiers as she was going, which I always thought was pretty dang cool. Now, they didn't do anything too special with this. It's not like you can collapse it or anything like that, but I don't have a 6th scale accordion up until getting this figure, so I'm pretty happy. I might end up giving it to one of my Jawas or something and just letting them jam out, because I think it's kind of a fun little thing to have, and I don't really want to hide it away in a box or anything like that, because it is pretty dang unique. They do also give you a set of gloves for her, which is a nice touch. She's got her tank driving gloves, but they're really hard to put on. I got them on once and took them off. I didn't really like the way they looked, and it's kind of a chore to do it. You can only put them on that hand. She does come with different hand sculpts, but you can only really do it with the open finger, open hands. Not that that's the end of the world, but did kind of limit it in some regards. Not horribly difficult to put on, but annoying enough to where I'm probably not going to use them myself. And then the one thing that I was very, very impressed with, they gave her a Tokarev, and they did an awesome job with this thing. So I'm going to try, and hopefully it'll focus. So you can actually see they've got the little CCCP brand on the handle, which is cool. Hopefully that focuses all right. Maybe. Oh, I've failed. Oh, there we go. So that I thought was really, really interesting. The other thing that I was honestly impressed with, and they might have just like directly taken an image offline and pretty much copied it to the T, but one of the cool things with Tokarev's, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but the serial number is going to be right there on a gun underneath the slide. And it's also going to have the manufacturer date. And they actually have 1941 listed there, which is a pretty accurate date for the Russian one. There you go. That's kind of fun. I just thought that was a nice little touch that they got in there. Now, also interesting tidbit about this gun, it does shoot 7.62, which is kind of unusual. It doesn't have a removable magazine, but that is fine, and you can't move the slide or anything like that. Also, the hammer is not movable to the best of my knowledge, although I may have just fooled myself. Let's see. Hey, look at that. You actually can move it. So that's kind of a fun little mechanic too, because one thing that's neat about this gun is the safety is actually just half-cocking that hammer. If the hammer's half-cocked, you're not able to move the slide or pull the trigger, so it's kind of fun that you can do that. Just a nice little touch there. But this honestly does look almost dead on to what a TT-33 would look like, so for anybody that is a fan of the firearms, they did a good job reproducing this one in a 6 scale. I probably just talked way too much about this gun, but there you go. A little bit of extra info. You do also get a sling for it. I'm not going to use this, but it can basically attach to the little loop down here at the bottom of the gun and then clip onto the belt. Realistically, this would be a sidearm that they would pretty rarely use, and oftentimes they might need to drop it to do something like actually repair the tank, something like that. So they did have different things like slings and stuff like that attached to it, so they could kind of just let it fall down and they'd be good to go. They wouldn't have to worry about, you know, literally dropping and losing the gun. So kind of a nice little thing that they've got on there. Now with the deluxe version, oops, I forgot one thing. You get a standard military hat, which I'm never going to use on her, but if you wanted it, it's got the nice little classic hammer and sickle, and it just puffs up and puts right on her head. Not for me. I think the tank driving hat is way cooler. You can remove these goggles, but they're not overly flexible, so I just kind of plopped them on the head, and we're going to leave them there for the time. But if you wanted to pull them off, slide them down, adjust them, you know, you do have that option. As for the deluxe, the big thing that you get is this. So you get this really cool tank stand. Honestly, when I saw pictures of it, I thought it was just kind of a podium, but the thing is massive. It really is pretty dang huge. Also, this top part is very, very much all metal. It feels like cast iron almost. It's really heavy, really clunky. You can kind of hear that bad boy moving. But it is really well made. They did a good job with that. They did not cheapen out on it, so I was impressed in that regard. And my favorite thing about the Deluxe is you get an alternate head sculpt, which we will take a real quick look at and then wrap up. This head sculpt is amazing. It's the reason that I got the Deluxe. The tank is pretty cool, but when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, I need it. There it is in all its glory. Now, if you haven't gotten head sculpts with rooted hair, they usually will have this little plastic thing on them just to keep the hair in place. This head is 100% going on her body at some point. I just haven't done it yet, so I've left this on. But look at how cool that is. I suppose we could slide that up. They just did such a dang cool job with that. She looks so angry. So that's her kind of in-action pose when she's, you know, going to town. I just absolutely love this. I don't know if I'll end up using it on, you know, definitely on this figure. I might leave her happy on that and then just kit bash with this one. I haven't decided, but holy cow, this head sculpt is fantastic. And hopefully Facepool will eventually just release it separately. Because honestly, the Deluxe is a little over 200 bucks. And I certainly would not say spend that much money just to get this head sculpt. But if they ever do release the head sculpt separately, I think most of them are in the $30 to $40 range, and this one is phenomenal. The actual figure, normal version's right around 160 to 180, depending on where you get it. I got mine from Giant Toy, but they're actually sold out. You might want to check them. They may have the standard one left. If not, Big Bad Toy Store does have them in stock, and they're not terribly more expensive than Giant Toy in this case. Plus, they're local, so they'll also be a relatively quick ship if you're in the U.S. But definitely check Giant Toy as well, just because it might be a little cheaper, and it's always good to save you some.